The tabletop takeaway.
Game mechanics on display.
3 designers share the stage.
Pick a genre and we'll play.
The tabletop takeaway.
Welcome to the Tabletop Takeaway. I am Trevor Muller-Hagel.
I'm Ananda Gunaratna.
And I'm Charlie McCarran.
And today we are going to start with our first episode on social deduction. One Night Ultimate Werewolf. Oh, okay. So we obviously wanted to choose some games that really represented the genre. And One Night for me is a very good intro to this genre because it's so easy to pick up and play. If you're playing with the app, it tells you what you do over the night. You don't have to worry about someone running the story for you. Like, very clear cut, very easy to pick up.
It's also a lot of fun. I mean, I remember back in college, I discovered One Night Ultimate Werewolf, and it basically fired Mafia for me.
Sure.
I just couldn't play that anymore.
Yeah.
After I discovered that one.
So for people who haven't played Mafia or Werewolf, that's like the classic version of the social deduction game. And the whole group there's one or more werewolves or mafia members out there, and the villagers are trying to figure out who that is. And there's a night phase where you close your eyes, and then whoever is leading the group, usually in person it would have to be a person, and they'd say like, werewolves wake up, and then decide who to kill among the villagers. And then they go to sleep, and the village wakes up, and everyone debates about who they think is most suspicious. But One Night, maybe Trevor, you could explain how this works.
Yeah, so One Night is taking the werewolf concept and putting in one night. So there's only one night where everyone goes to bed and goes to sleep, and they all have different ways of interacting with the roles at the table, or maybe they don't. But there's got probably 10 roles or something in the base game. I don't know the exact number off the top of my head, but you all get to kind of interact with it in different ways. And the werewolves don't actually kill anyone in this one.
Yeah.
Which is really interesting is that like, yeah, they're werewolves and they're going to kill people in the future, but you got to catch them on the first night in this one.
I mean, we don't know that they're going to kill people.
They could be good werewolves.
I think the town is the real monsters because they're the ones who are bloodthirsty and want to kill people.
Right. They want to kill someone and they don't even really care ultimately if it's a werewolf. I mean, they want it to be a werewolf.
They don't kill,
but they're willing to kill a person too.
Right. Yeah. They still win as long as a werewolf dies.
Yep.
It's a very bloodthirsty town.
Yeah.
But it is a medieval village, and we understand that times were different then. You know.
And so the magic of it though is the roles.
Right.
So there's the werewolf roles and a villager role if you're starting out basic, but in our play,
villagers are terrible.
But villagers have no special ability. But in our play, we had 5 of us, and
that sounds right.
We had each person had a unique role.
Something where we can interact with the game in some capacity.
And one of the interesting things about One Night Ultimate Werewolf, when you compare it to a lot of other role-based social deduction games, is a lot of the roles involve swapping around what people's roles are, often without even telling them. So you can end up switching teams without knowing it.
Which gets a big sense of panic when you're like, oh my God, am I actually a werewolf now? As what happened with me and Charlie in our last game, I think. Like, and I was the tanner, he was the werewolf. The tanner wants to die, and if he dies, he's the only winner. So, like, he's trying to get people to think that he's a werewolf. But then because I was the tanner, and I thought I was still the tanner, and then Charlie was the werewolf, but we were switched, it created this weird dynamic. And, like, everyone's like, okay, we're going to ignore you two. We're going to kill someone else over here. It's like, this is weird.
That was probably the most interesting interaction I've had in One Night Ultimate Werewolf. Because I was, like, going through my head how I would have to win.
Right.
And it's like, I got to convince them to kill me instead. So I just, at the end, I think I just pretended like I was really suspicious.
Right.
And got the vote. And the other nice thing is there's a timer from the app.
Yep.
Yeah, like 5 minutes.
5 minutes.
Which sounds very short.
Yeah.
But I think the swapping around of roles is actually pretty key to what makes One Night Ultimate Werewolf so good.
Yeah.
Because the fact that you might have been turned into a werewolf by someone else means you need, even as a good player, you need to be very careful about how forthcoming you are. Because if you're, say, the seer, and you come out and prove that, yep, you were the seer, and then someone says, well, I swapped you with this player, and then that player says, well, I was a wolf, you have no alibi. You were the seer. You can't refute anything.
You have to discredit the person who swapped you as the best play, but even then...
Well, and what's worth? What if you looked at? So the seer is a role that gets to see another player's role or two of the unused roles. But like, what if you verified their role before they said they swapped you? I mean, that's like the worst case scenario. So even good players sometimes need to be a little bit cagey or even lie about what they did, just in case they were swapped. You know, until they can verify that didn't happen, and then they can be more forthcoming.
Yeah, I think that's a huge advantage over thinking back to games of Mafia. It's like they're a little more one-dimensional, where you know you're good or you know you're bad.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I like that twist.
I think it's very good to have reasons for good players to lie.
Yes.
But that being said, it can go a bit too far sometimes, because one issue I sometimes have in games of One Night Ultimate Werewolf is people are not forthcoming at the start of the game, especially with new players. Like, you'll share your information and they just won't say anything.
Oh, okay.
Which is kind of annoying, even though strategically it might be a good idea. Since, again, if you share too much and someone swapped you, you could lose because of that.
Right.
But it does stall the game a bit.
Well, and there is that time sensitivity too. If you have that clock ticking down, and the new player isn't going to be as used to that, so they're not going to be pushing for that information from others either.
Yeah.
And so I think once you get that cadence down, it gets a lot easier to kind of get into character, even if you're lying about your character.
Yeah.
It's just a lot easier that way.
Yeah.
And I think another design challenge with these kind of games is the more interesting abilities that you put into it, the more afraid people are to say anything too.
Oh, yeah.
Because, and I'm sure we'll get into this little spoiler for next episode with Blood on the Clock Tower, but that's like the extreme expanded version of Werewolf.
Oh, yeah, for sure.
And I think having tried designing one of these games, I really quickly learned that I had way too complicated of roles, and players didn't say anything. Almost the entire game.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
Because they're worried about getting caught out in a lie because there's so much information.
Well, and just not understanding the rules, and you can't ask once the game starts.
Right.
That's the other big problem.
Right, especially without a moderator.
How does the seer work? Oh. Right.
Yeah. Yeah, you have to ask, like, how does every role work again?
Well, and that is kind of great, at least with One Night, is that in the app they do go over everyone's roles and it's said out loud, where in Blood on the Clock Tower, the storyteller goes around and tells people, like, hey, okay, do your thing, and they communicate in silence.
Yeah.
And so you're sitting there waiting to, like, find out what happened that night, but you don't hear anything else. And so, like, having that app companion as a starting social deduction player, super helpful.
Yeah.
Yeah. Because you can sort of imagine that maybe something's going on at the moment. I guess one aspect of One Night Ultimate Werewolf that I sometimes find a little bit awkward is voting.
Yeah.
Specifically because in One Night Ultimate Werewolf, you are required to vote. You can't abstain. And for the most part, this is fine. But there are a couple scenarios where it's a bit awkward. One of these being, if there are no werewolves, which is possible because in each game there are 3 unused roles in the center. If there are no werewolves, then the town only wins if no one dies, which means you have to engineer pointing in a circle, which I guess isn't too bad if you can talk people into doing that. The other situation where the no abstentions rule is a little bit awkward is with the tanner specifically.
Oh, sure.
Because the tanner has no stake in the vote unless they are executed. They really don't want to vote. They don't really care how they vote. And especially if the tanner knows they're not going to win because they haven't convinced people to kill them.
Right.
Then in a way they are sort of king-making without a
true.
stake in it, which I find a bit awkward. I kind of wish there was a way to abstain.
Interesting.
Yeah. Does what do you guys have for takeaways for this one?
For me, I'm definitely going to lean into that having these very colorful roles that can do very unique things, and having those kind of come to the forefront of a game like this. Really, and obviously Blood on the Clocktower will get more into these unique roles, but for games like this, having very like simple, clear rules, at least to start, especially, and being able to introduce people to your world and to what this game is about. I think they did a really good job with that, especially with the app companion. Like, it does a really good job.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah.
Yeah, for my part, I think when you're designing a social deduction game, it's good to have reasons for players on the good team, or I should say maybe on the majority team, the team that doesn't know who their teammates are.
Oh, sure.
It's good to have some reasons for them, or at least for some of them, to lie or to be misleading, because people like lying, and it's no fun if only the evil team gets to do it.
Or they don't like lying, and it raises their adrenaline, know, which some people really want that.
Right.
Yeah.
But it's good because it means another reason is because it means that lying is not automatically equal to evil.
Right.
Which means people need to think a little bit more about people's motivations beyond just are they telling the truth or not.
Yeah. I think that's a great point, because I find it super stressful to be on the lying team. And it's nice if there's other, a way to cast dispersions on other people. Like if anyone else is seeming like they're lying too, that helps.
Well, I'm going to maybe even amend mine a little bit. One thing that I think is extremely important for these games is to have minions, having these characters that are on the evil team but can still die and the evil team wins. And they have that ability to distract people away from the evil team.
Definitely.
And
so there's less pressure on them.
There's less pressure on the evil one.
Yeah.
And they can have kind of a team, and they can kind of be conniving together. Because that's a lot more fun than just trying to be on your own. It's very rewarding when you win on your own, but having a team is much more fun.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Then even the good team, if they can spot like, well, I know the two of you are evil, guaranteed, but I still don't know which one to vote for.
Right.
I will say being a minion the minion role, of course, on the wolf team, but not a wolf,
right.
So it's fine if they die. Being the minion in One Night Ultimate Werewolf is a ton of fun. Like you feel like, oh, it doesn't matter if I die, and you also feel this great bond with your wolves.
Yeah.
You're like, okay, these are my buddies. I need to protect them.
Yeah.
I'm there for you guys. Don't worry.
Which it's so funny. It's such a support and helpful, and like you'd normally think like a cleric or something like that in another game, but like it's an evil minion.
No, I think the minion is probably the most fun role.
Oh yeah, I like the Tanner still myself, but
I guess my second vote would be the hunter, just because you can do whatever you want.
Yeah, that's true.
But the hunter role, if they die, whoever they voted for also dies, so they don't care about convincing people. They just need to figure out who the wolves are.
And maybe even convince people to kill them so they have a choice.
Yeah. I mean, that's the perfect example of a good role that doesn't mind lying, which is why it's so much fun.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, something that wasn't immediately in my mind, but social deduction is one of the few genres that's almost always a team-based game,
True.
too. And I feel like there should be more team games out there.
Oh, yeah.
Like, there's so many non-team games. It's either cooperative, competitive, and everyone's working on their own. But, yeah.
Being on a team is fun.
It is. Yeah.
Absolutely.
Especially in social things like this.
Oh, yeah.
But
especially if it can change to game, and you have those old prejudices still hanging out. It's like, wait, I didn't trust you before, but maybe this time I can?
Yeah, exactly.
It's like you question yourself automatically, like, ooh, I don't know.
Yep.
Yeah, it's
the
great.
Meta
of
the game.
Oh, yeah.
I'd say my takeaway after playing it this time was I had forgotten how it worked, and just the fact that it is literally one night.
Right.
And then we vote, and it's done.
Yep.
And I actually love that because it solves a lot of things, but one of them being like, if you screw up your roll, it's not so bad because it was timed. It was a 5-minute short game.
Or if you forgot to look at your roll like I did when the pizza arrived.
Oh, no.
Ooh,
Yeah.
that was saved by the bell on that one.
Yeah. Playing blind.
Yeah. I don't know what I am.
Yeah, exactly.
Doesn't matter. I'm not a wolf.
That's great. That's definitely a good point. Having a game that short means balance and luck don't really matter at all.
Right.
Yeah.
Which is why you can really expand it and get some real weird abilities in there, like One Night Ultimate Alien, an expansion for this, which is ridiculous and
It's pure chaos.
focuses on the app. You actually need the app for that one because you have like temporal rifts happening.
Oh,
and
my goodness.
some of the abilities of the characters change every time.
Yeah.
Whoa.
Like just like card numbers or direction or
That one's a bit much chaos for me.
It's a lot of chaos.
But yeah, I mean, you can also, with such short games, the good players can just do absolutely crazy, insane strategies where they're just guessing about stuff because it doesn't matter. It's like 5 minutes.
Yeah.
Right?
Versus like a game of Battlestar Galactica. I don't know if you've played that. I do like that game, but it's quite long.
Yeah.
And if you kind of screw up as a Cylon character, like it might be kind of hard to come back from.
Yeah, I feel like if you're having a longer game where there's a hidden role like that, then it's hard to have a long game.
I don't know about these hybrid games that have hidden roles, but they're really long. Because once the traitor's revealed, I mean,
There should be a way for once the traitor is like figured out, then it like multiplies.
Yeah, and I think what works well in those games like Battlestar and the other one I really like is Dark Moon.
Oh yeah,
which is sort of, it was originally called like Battlestar Galactica Light, but
right.
When at any time the traitor can reveal themselves, and then they get a special power that they can use every turn. So I think that does help fix it. But yeah. Well, yeah. Any other last thoughts about One Night Ultimate Werewolf?
Just gonna reiterate, I love the time span of this game. It's so quick, it's over, play again. For me, I can play a few times in a row pretty cleanly without like getting bored. After that, it starts to tank a little bit for me and I need to play a new game. But like, it's great to start off game night with this kind of thing.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. I think the idea of switching your victory condition without knowing it is pretty cool, and I think it works well in one night.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, well, I'm excited to talk about more social deduction games coming up in our next few episodes.
Blood on the Clock Tower.
Yes.
Coming next. Hey, thanks for listening to The Tabletop Takeaway. This podcast is made possible by listeners like you. So please tell your friends and visit our website at thetabletoptakeaway.com, where you can suggest games and mechanics for us to cover next on the show.